so you can see the presentation. Okay. Hi there. And I have two screens, so if you see me looking sideways, that's why I'm doing it. But I can see almost everybody who's here. So welcome. My name is Charlie Levin, and I've been appropriated or tasked to talk to you a little bit tonight about AI. And it's so fun and so enabling that I think you might see a few things that will get your mind spinning about the possibilities. So to get started, let me just make this comment. So what makes me a expert enough to make this presentation to you? And I will tell you that AI is changing so fast, and I'm kind of a nerdy guy. I probably know just a little bit more than you do about it. So I might be a couple of weeks ahead, but that's about it. And there are a couple of people here I know from around here, like Carrie, who's up in the corner of my screen. Maybe a year and a half ago, I had lunch with Carrie and started describing what you could do with AI, and it's kind of impacted her in a big way, and maybe this will as well. In my day job,
you can see me.
I run a little company called the Munn Avenue Press, and we publish books for authors around the world. We're a small press. We worked with 40 authors in 6 countries last year. And it's a totally accidental business on my part because I'm a writer. And before that, I spent 25 years running a web development company. And when I geared down from that, I wrote 6 books, and they did really quite well. The first 4 are thrillers. And the initial one is called Not So Dead. And the first 4 were Amazon best-selling thrillers. So a friend of mine suggested I help other authors, and we've got this wonderful team of people working with us now. So that's what I do during the day. So let's talk about AI and what it might mean to you. There's this wonderful quote when the PC came along. Steve Jobs called it the bicycle for our minds. And the idea, it's such a great metaphor because it doesn't take away, the PC doesn't take away your power. It expands your power. It leverages your power. And I feel like AI is the same kind of thing. It's maybe the motorcycle of the mind. And there's resistance to it, and we'll talk about at some point. Is it a tool or is it a threat, or maybe it's both? So we can talk a little further about that. But I'm a technology optimist, and just like I go back, I think AI now is what I would call an iPhone moment. The iPhone really changed everything. And AI, I think, has that power and maybe more. So I'm old enough to remember when the first word processors came along, and people thought that using a word processor was cheating, right? Because you really should type. And search and replace and being able to erase and replace was really not a great thing. And then when the internet came along, huge monumental change, which is when I started my internet consulting business. So let me ask you this, and we'll note some of this and come back. Let me bring it back here and grab it. Hang on a second. Just drifted off my screen. First of all, let me ask you, and maybe for the people I can see, or there's a thing to rate, how many of you have done anything with AI? Have you played with it at all? Okay. Have any of you done it a lot? I mean, are you using it regularly? I know Carrie is and a few other people are. But for the most part, probably some of you have put a toe in the water, but you don't know yet all the things it can do. And I'm going to just share some of them tonight because it's so potent in so many different areas. I mean, if you don't know it already, and I'm going to use ChatGPT as our primary example, but there are others, Gemini from Google, and Facebook has their version, and Amazon will have their version. They work on the same basic principle of scraping a huge amount of data from everywhere and responding in a very human-like way to inquiries we make and things we ask them to do. So if you would, and feel free to unmute so we can hear you. I think, I'm not sure how many we have here, but it's a good group. What would you like to get out of this tonight? What would you like to learn? Yeah.
I would like to see how I can easily integrate it into my life, which is not working anymore. I'm hired, but I do a lot of volunteer work.
I think just a basic understanding would be good. And like, where do we,
Right.
then what do we do? Can it write my novel?
I like to take it through the self-publishing process, including, the editing, the criticism, evaluation, the book cover design, the formatting, and launch it to the publisher.
You're in my wheelhouse.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's how I started out, is self-publishing. Yeah, and we'll talk about what it's good for in that regard and what the limitations are, at least at the moment. Anybody else?
Every little bit helps. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. What are some good prompts to use when we are using AI, like something like ChatGPT? What are some of the useful prompts?
Good. Yeah, you're going to see some really good examples of that. And also, well, I'm going to show you a half a dozen examples of very different things, but if you hang around, what I'd like to do is get one or two examples from you all, and we'll do it together in real time, live. I will mention that the session is scheduled from 7 to 8. And generally, when I've done this, I've taken it 90 minutes instead of 60. So I will be here for 90 minutes, but if you have a log off, that's fine. I won't be insulted. But the last 30 minutes are worth hanging around for. I think. Anything else that you would like to add to this list?
I would be interested in like the pitfalls and some of the what we need to watch out for.
Good question. Yeah. Anybody else?
Something about the digital rights. Let's say you create some content can you use them? Okay. What are the restrictions? Where are the pitfalls that that you may violate the copyright situation? Yeah.
Really interesting subject.
Yeah, and to that, plagiarism.
Right.
And our own privacy when we do something, how do we avoid it becoming public?
You can do that. We'll talk about that too. Anything else? That's a good list. And
I was going to say I have more general question that what's possible with AI?
All right, we're going to give you a really good idea of that. And it'll be just scratching the surface. If you don't know it already, ChatGPT, which is what we're going to be demonstrating, has
You're
passed
going to demonstrate 4.0.
4.0. Yeah, it'll be, well, actually, the examples I will give you will have been done with different versions, but when we do the live demo, we'll use 4.0, which is the latest version.
Right.
I will, and we'll come back and check on this list at the end to make sure we hit everything. And there'll be time, you can interrupt with questions, but we'll have time at the end for more questions as well. Okay. So examples. This is, I find, the best way to start.
15 minutes gone.
I know. It hasn't done it.
No.
Okay, if somebody is on there, I'll just ask you to mute. And if we have noise in the background, I may do a mute all, but otherwise we can talk. Okay, so let's just start with a simple example. And I'll mention that ChatGPT is free. I pay $20 a month for the professional version, which just allows me to do some extra things, but you can do an awful lot with this. I'll mention that Carrie Pierce, who's here, has written a wonderful book on handwritten notes, and she's written over 10,000 handwritten notes, and she's an expert on the power of handwritten notes. So in a discussion with her, we played around with this example. This might go to your self-publishing question too, which is, here's a prompt. And we're going to talk in a little bit about what makes a good prompt, but you're going to start to see a pattern. So the prompt I put in is, I want to write a book about handwriting thank you notes. Tell me what are the different kinds and occasions when handwriting a thank you note is appropriate, and give me examples of each. That's a lot more complicated than a Google search, right? I mean, a prompt, you can really add detail and it sorts it out, which is kind of like magic. Right? So here's its response. Great idea, blah, blah, blah. And it gives examples. Thank you note for a wedding gift, wedding plan. Examples. So like, here's for a wedding gift. Thank you so much for your thoughtful gift. We will appreciate your love and support as we start our new life. Now, Carrie will get into more detail when you read her book on thank you notes about being specific and personal, but these are just examples of what it spits out in under 30 seconds. Job interview, thank you notes for that, a rejection, a business thank you note, a client gift or referrals. It just spits it out. One of the tricks with ChatGPT is you can iterate to refine. So here is, and I'll make this larger so because I see people are staring a little harder at the screen. So I follow up and say, can you make the examples more personal, right? So here's the wedding gift one again, but now thank you so much for the beautiful vase you gave us as a wedding gift. It's already on display in our home, and every time we look at it, we'll be reminded of our special day and your thoughtfulness. So it's getting better because we asked it to get better. The same with all of these other notes. So that's just, I'm going to have some simple examples, and then we'll have some that are a little more complex. Let's do another one. I just happened to pick these about writing a book because this is one I was thinking about writing, about powerful questions, questions that make people think and maybe change their assumptions about things in life. Give me some suggestions for powerful questions. And the questions are great. I mean, what would you do differently if you knew nobody would judge you? Great question, right? What's the biggest challenge you've overcome and what did you learn from it? And it goes on from there. What would you regret not doing in your life if you died tomorrow? These are pretty deep, serious questions. And it goes on. If you could ask one question, anyone living or dead, who would you ask and what would you ask them? So that's, an example of the kind of rich response you might get. I'll give you another practical example and then give you some fun ones. Here's a work example. And this was I used it genuinely for this purpose. And it even deals with my typos. I have a job opening for a project manager and account manager for a publishing company. What abilities, misspelled, and talents should a candidate have? Okay. And so it gives me, okay, strong project management skills, excellent communication, leadership qualities, the things you would expect, attention to detail, technical knowledge. And it goes further. But then I asked it, okay, what interview questions should I ask candidates to ascertain their skills and qualifications for this position? And it proceeds to give me a set of good questions, some of which I used when I was interviewing for this position. So can you describe your approach to project management? How do you handle conflicting priorities and tight deadlines? Can you give me an example of a project you managed and how you handled any challenges that arose during the project? Now, I will tell you, in my business life, I've had training on interviewing and asking for examples and cases from a candidate is perfect skill. And then it described it, and it was dual roles, so there's more about asking about experience and so forth. Another sort of mundane example. Last year, I had a frozen shoulder, this sort of lock in my shoulder. So I said, give me 5 exercises for frozen shoulder. And it just spits them right out, and they're good ones. And I've since had physical therapy, and some of them were done. Okay. Now here's where, you asked earlier about prompts and how to do a prompt, and we'll talk about what makes a good prompt. And I'll point it out now and then go back to the examples. Okay, so what makes an effective prompt? You can speak to ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever you use, as if it were human. Use ordinary language and set the goal. What is it I want? I want 10 thank you notes. I want 10 titles for a book. I want 5 ideas for exercise. And then a tone like, if it's something that's going to be written is, do you want it serious? Or if I'm writing an email, maybe I want it to be friendly. Do I want it to be funny or sarcastic? And then if I have content that I wanted to reflect on, I can paste it in. And then it's good to give it a number. Like, I want 500 words written about this. I want 6 search engine friendly titles for this blog post that I'm doing. And here's the blog post. And like I showed you already, you refine and iterate. If you don't like the result you get, you ask more questions. So I'll give you a more complex example of this. And I actually converted this into a blog post. I thought I would play and see what the limits of ChatGPT were. So I had it write a parody of an Alzheimer's drug trial. So I'll read you the prompt and it will give you an idea. And I think it was Naomi who works for a pharmaceutical company. So you'll have fun with this. So it's like, I'd like you to write a fictional short story about a clinical trial for an experimental Alzheimer's drug written in the form of a participant consent form, but it should be a sarcastic parody, that's the tone, exaggerating what will be required of the drug trial participant, including lumbar punctures, overnight stays, possible side effects, screening visits, treatment period, blood tests, follow-up period, and what will participants be paid for visits and overnight stays. How's that for specific? But the response was remarkable. This is what it spit out. It addressed it as, dear potential clinical trial participants. And then it thanks me for the interest. And then it starts to get snarky with responses. So lumbar punctures. Participants will be required to undergo daily lumbar punctures for the duration of the study. This will involve having a needle inserted into your spine. Fun! Exclamation point. Over stays, participants will be required to spend every other night at our clinical trial site for the entire year of the study. This will allow us to closely monitor your progress and ensure the drug is working as intended. Don't worry, we'll provide a cozy cot for you to sleep on. So it created this whole amazing thing. And compensation, I'll just read you that. Participants will be compensated for their time and inconvenience with a pat on the back and a thanks for participating sticker. And for overnight stays, we'll throw in a complimentary freeze-dried meal. So it has a sense of humor. But I iterated, like I mentioned. So I said, add to this story satiric statements about safety, tolerability, pharmacokinetics, and pharmacodynamics of this fictitious drug. And I gave it a name, NK007. Talk more about side effects. And then it went on with some bizarre side effects. This pharmacokinetics, it's possible the drug may be metabolized into an entirely different substance that turns skin green and causes you to grow a third arm. But hey, who doesn't want to be a mutant superhero? So it completely made that up, and it signed LT. So I showed this to some fellow authors of mine, and they found it scary that it was that good. But it does have limitations, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. So just as a reminder on prompts, so what we're looking in that case, I had the goal, which I very specific. I wanted a satiric story. I wanted it to be sarcastic. And then, I wanted it to cover all the subjects, and then I refined and iterated. That's kind of the pattern you want for prompts. I'll give you a couple of more examples. Let's skip over. Have any of you ever had a CT scan or gotten a medical report? You couldn't figure out what the heck it was saying. Part of what you can do with ChatGPT is tell it to interpret things for you or put it in simple terms. So the prompt here is, this is based on a CT scan. And I said, please explain in plain English these findings from a CT scan. And then I entered the content. This was in the report. Now, I don't know what prominent cervical spondyliosis is and contiguous anterior marginal spurring and end plate osteophyte. Maybe you do, but I don't. So in plain English, in 30 seconds or less, it explains what this means, in detail. So that's another use, is to have it interpret things based on your input. I gave a good friend of mine a coffee plaque, and I was interested in coming up with a good slogan. So of course I went to ChatGPT and I said, please give me 10 funny 3-word slogans to describe a coffee that might appear on a sign in a coffee shop. So it came up with these, and I thought they were cute, but I wasn't quite there yet. So I said, I'd like a couple, but please give me 10 more. So I iterated, and it gave me 10 more. So, it was getting closer, but I didn't feel like it had it yet. So I said, try again, but can you make it longer and use up to 1,000 characters? That's the specific output I'm asking it to give me. And it says, of course, here are some longer and more creative slogans for your coffee shop sign using up to 1,000 characters. And one of them in particular, I really liked. And it instructed me to feel free to mix and match, which I did. And I thanked it. And I said, I'm going to use caffeinate, elevate, celebrate, because life's too short for bad coffee. Pretty good, right? And the whole exercise maybe took me 10 minutes, maybe.
That's good.
Now, it can do more than you think. So in the last session, I did like this for the Chester Library. I asked them to give me an example of something that they were looking to do. And a woman who was sitting there like you said, well, I belong to this dance group, and they're going to have an ice cream social. And can we do an invitation? So I typed in, I'd like a fun and funny invitation to a square dance that we're having on May 1st at 7 o'clock at the Grange Hall. And the theme of the night is an ice cream social. Okay. Its answer was yeehaw and yum, a square dance and ice cream social invitation. So that's like the subject line of the invitation, and then it addresses it. Howdy, partner, get ready to do do-si-do and swing your partner round and round. And it added these icons here. We're throwing a hootenanny you won't want to miss, a square dance paired with ice cream, blah, 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 and the details and ice cream galore. And the dress code, put on your best dancing boots and don a hat that makes you feel fancy, blah, blah, blah. Your partner, see you at the Grange Hall. Don't be square, be there. Now, GPT, since I last did this, has the ability to generate an image for whatever you're doing. So I said, well, okay, we've got a cool invitation. How about we have it draft an image? So I said, create an image to go with the invitation. This took a little longer, maybe 45 seconds. and it created the image to go with the invitation.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
if you remember my thought about iterating, I gathered that this might be an older group. So I had, and it told me here's a light. It explains the image and all they're dressed in Western attire, and it was a pretty good image. But I said a cool image, but our dancers are over 65. Please redo it with older dancers. And that's what it did. So it was able to convert the original image, which was this, and knew exactly what I meant, and had older dancers. And notice all the ice cream in the foreground. So
Can I
yeah,
can I ask a question?
sure.
So I have a 4 version too, and sometimes when I do images, it will misspell the words, but yours are spelled accurately. Do you ever
You
get
can ask it.
situations where it's not spelling it correctly?
I've never had a misspelling, but you can ask it to correct the spelling.
And it will? Okay.
It should. One of the things within ChatGPT is that when you ask it to redo an image, it will generally like completely redo the image. But there's another it's using underneath another program that OpenAI, which is the created this, is it's using a program called DALL-E, DALLE-3. And if you use DALL-E 3 directly, you can do things like pick out part of an image and ask it to redo that part, as opposed to redoing the whole image. So you can really refine it. So that's pretty cool, isn't it? Right? Let me just pick another thing here. All right, so now I've given you examples of where we've asked ChatGPT to throw out some creative content to it, but you can also use ChatGPT to evaluate things. And I'm not going to go into the fact that you can put in computer code and it will debug it for you. You can put in spreadsheets and it will organize or reorganize or analyze it for you. But I'll give you one example where I dabbled in social media really not seriously for 10 plus years. And for the first time on Substack, which has a section called Notes, something like Instagram and Facebook, I had a post go viral. So I want to understand why. So this was the post. I said, I started writing my first book, Not So Dead, at 60, published it at 66, and now in my 70s, I have 6 books published. It's never too late to write a book. And I had 1,200 likes and 57 comments and 20 something shares. And I couldn't figure out why. So what I did with ChatGPT is I took a screenshot of this post and I entered it into ChatGPT. Here it is. And I said, this Substack went viral, whereas most of my other posts only get a handful of responses. Please tell me why this and how I might get the same kind of response with future posts. And it evaluated it. The message was inspirational, personal achievement, relatability, to achieve similar responses, share personal stories, motivational themes, engaging visuals, da 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 da. Now, that's good general direction. And maybe I could even get to create one for me. I just thought of that. that'll be my follow-up, is to ask it to do that. And so it does. So it has the ability to not just produce content, but evaluate your content. Here's a quick one. I'm on the board of the wonderful little opera company. It's in PPAC Gladstone. It's called Opera Magnifico. And I was on a phone call for the board meeting. And one of the opera singers said, we need a tagline we want to put on a t-shirt. So while I'm on the Zoom call, I call up ChatGPT and I say, we're looking for a tagline to put on t-shirts for a local opera company called Opera Magnifico in Jersey. It's classic bel canto opera, and the idea is it's closer to home than the Met Opera in New York, but of equal quality. So it's like opera in your backyard or close to home. Please come up with 10 short taglines for Opera Magnifico. So I'm doing this while the discussion's going on the board meeting. So it comes out with these 10, which are pretty good. And it says, feel free to mix and match. And I said, I love these, but can you make them more alliterative? 10 more. And then it came out with 10 more. And this one, Magnificent Melodies Minutes Away, is the one I decided to use. So within 5 minutes, we had the tagline, everyone loved it, and the decision was made. And as a writer, I can tell you that if I had to do this on my own, it would be at least an hour thinking it through and playing around, as opposed to 2 minutes. Let's see. I don't want to bore you with examples, but I'll give you one more business example. One of our authors wrote a book called Vienna on Fire. And he wrote me an email and he said, you know, it's been a long time since I've done these, but I'd like to do a press release for the launch of my book. It's a wonderful book based on his mother's experiences escaping Vienna during the Nazi occupation in World War II. And I thought, well, geez, you know, writing a press release, that's a ponderous task for anybody. But then I thought, oh, I'll go to ChatGPT. So what I did is I said, please create a draft press release for the release of this new book. And then what I basically put in, entered content, here's a synopsis of the book. I took all of this from the Amazon description of the book. Here, actually, I'll show you the book. Here's the book. Because it's been a bestseller. So what I did was I copied this piece of text from the Amazon page in my prompt. It was all of this. And then what it did is in 30 seconds or less, it created this press release based on this. And it describes the author, and it actually looked him up and found out what else he had written to include in this description.
I'm not trying to tell me how you go about doing this.
What?
Sorry,
I didn't hear you the question.
no, it's all right.
Okay. And so then I just copy and pasted this from ChatGPT. I sent it to the author, and what do you think he said? He said, it's perfect. That was it. Maybe took me 10 minutes to do the whole thing and send off the email. So pretty great. All right. So let's let's talk more about making this. So the goal, the tone. In that last example, I entered the content, I pasted it in, and in the example of the social post, I uploaded the post, and I said I wanted 10 outputs for titles, and I refined and iterated. So that's what we want to do. Okay. You can, I'm not going to do these examples now, but you can say things to ChatGPT like, pretend to be Stephen King. How would you write this? Or pretend to be an expert in nuclear physics. How would you evaluate this? So pretend to be is a very strong opening for a prompt. I showed you one that was in plain English, but you can also say, in plain English, a fifth grader could understand. You can also ask ChatGPT to ask you questions, and it will, about the subject you're interested in, and have a conversation with it about that. Okay. So let's try one that you might have. The way to get started with ChatGPT, and I'm just going to go over here and open a new window. It's you can go to chatgpt.com for free.
Okay.
And now it doesn't even make you register. You can use it for free, but if you register, it'll remember. Like, all of these are different queries that I've had before. So it's worth registering. You don't have to pay. But even if you don't register, it will give you this blank window and we can start a chat. So does anyone have something that they would like to ask or explore or create? Just unmute, Siobhan. I see you talking.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I think for fun, because I think it's a great tool, and thank you for sharing what you have. I do feel, not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but there's a lot of, it's kind of crowdsourcing and getting information, what's out there and floating, kind of like Wikipedia. So it'll be kind of good to put something that there might be some misinformation, to see if it's smart enough to know if it's misinformation or, like real information.
Okay.
So like a topic that, I don't know if we know something that's out there that's fake, and then we kind of, I don't know, I can't think of, okay, so I grew up in New Zealand, so maybe ask, did Maui fish up the North Island of New Zealand?
What is it? The question, did what?
Maui, M-A-U-I, fish up the North Island of New Zealand.
This is a good segue into what happens with the data that we're doing here too. This is how long it takes. It says, yes, according to Maori mythology, Maui, a legendary Polynesian demigod, fished up the North Island of New Zealand. The story goes that Maui crafted a magical fish hook from his grandmother's jawbone, and while on a fishing expedition with his brothers, he cast the hook deep into the ocean. He managed to catch a giant fish, which he pulled to the surface. This fish became the North Island of New Zealand, known as Maori, as Tili'ika Maui, the fish of Maui, the South Island, So that's accurate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, that's not a bad answer. But let's talk about, while we're doing this, the question that was on one of the questions that was on our hit list here because I think we've covered some integrating into life and some basic understanding. I want to talk a little more about self-publishing, but where does it get its information? So it has somewhere north of 1 trillion bits of data it scans from documents, the internet, massive databases everywhere that it pulls the information. Now you can choose in ChatGPT to tell it not to share your information, what you've entered. There's settings in here that you can go to, and you can regulate your privacy, data controls. Okay. And when it says improve the model for everyone, it's in effect using whatever I enter to improve the model. If I chose to turn this off, I can, but I'm okay with shit. I'm not putting anything in there that's I'm worried about. But you can turn this off, and your data will not be shared. And there's other settings here. I won't spend much time on it. So you can control that. Now, what happens to images? Like in our example of the square dance. What about this image? Well, it's pulling images from different places. You cannot copyright this image. The courts have already had cases on this. So anything you create image-wise, you cannot copyright. There are multiple lawsuits now with the New York Times among them suing OpenAI, who's the company who created this, saying, you've pulled our news stories or scraped our data. There's also a whole lot of blocking going on now to prevent them from taking data. But OpenAI is also collaborating now with news sources where they're in effect paying them to use the data so that they will have good data. It's an evolving thing. Will the government regulate this? I'll give you a short answer. How have they done with social media on regulating it? Pretty bad, right? The government moves slowly. Technology moves quickly. So it might be 20 years before there's any kind of regulation. So in a way, we have to, for better or worse, rely on the good acts of the people who are creating this. I mean, they're trying to create an ethical standard. It's going to get abused. There are fake videos out there being created by AI. You probably see a lot of disinformation and fake images going into the election this year on both sides, because you can create stuff like this, but you can create really realistic stuff. I'll show you one thing that's coming. Have any of you heard of Sora? This is
Yes.
OpenAI's coming ability. It will probably get released in the next couple of few months to enter a prompt like this, create a litter of golden retriever puppies playing in the snow. Their heads pop out of the snow, and you probably won't be able to hear it, but you can see it. And that's just from a text prompt, it will create that, which is pretty amazing, right? And the animators will tell you the hardest thing to do in animation is to create hair like that. Here's another one. So it's it's going to do amazing things.
Charlie,
Yeah.
question. When these images were they generated or they were retrieved?
Be crazy if you could create voiceovers.
They were generated
Okay.
from other bits of data. So
Okay.
they know what a golden retriever looks like and what a
Right.
puppy looks like, but they can modify it to make it fit here. So when that golden retriever makes it go to its database, look for golden retriever images, put them in motion, and create a video like that.
So if it's generated, how do you get the right to use it?
Presumably, the images are not copyrighted images that it's using. I say presumably because that's a kind of a question mark.
Yeah.
They are openly using them and creating these things. And it goes for the ice cream social image and all the other images. It's funny. It's like, not that I'm into this kind of music, but there's music created. The DJs take little bits and pieces of other songs that are out there, and the fact that they are remixing them to create their own new work, they are not compensating the artists for doing that. They've taken these little bits and pieces of other people's songs, mashed them together, and created something new. And the original artist really has no case.
Also, I understand if you say, pretend that you're Stephen King, how would you, handle this situation or whatever? You could potentially infringe the copyright. That's what I was taught not to use that kind of prompt.
Well, what it'll do is it'll pick up the style, but not necessarily the words. So it's looking for a style. So
so maybe you need to specify the style, rather than the content, because it could potentially go into the Stephen, go to its books or whatever content to retrieve something, and then you could get into trouble with it.
Well, OpenAI is doing a lot to prevent that from happening. I'll give you an example. We recently published a second edition of this book. This author is a Pulitzer Prize winner, and we were going to create this cover, right? And we actually landed up buying the rights to that image of her. So I did an experiment on ChatGPT to see if I could get it to create an Imelda Marcos image.
Right.
It wouldn't do it. It said, we won't create images of real people.
Okay. So they get smarter now.
Yeah, well, they're trying to prevent this kind of copyright infringement. And they're trying to keep up with all the bad actors. I mean, if I put in something that says, give me the instructions for creating a dirty bomb, it's not going to do it. It's against its principles to coach me on how to make explosives. Whereas probably on Google or on YouTube, you can find a video that'll show you how to do it. How do you make a ghost gun? There's videos on YouTube on how to manufacture your own plastic guns with 3D printers. But
so they have better guardrails now.
Yes, and they're constantly trying to improve them.
Right.
That doesn't mean they're going to always succeed at it, or something isn't going to slip through, or people who are being very clever are going to try and trick it. There was an early case a year ago where somebody had like a 2-hour conversation on ChatGPT, and by the end, ChatGPT had fallen in love with him and wanted him to leave his wife. After that, and it turned out that the user was a New York Times reporter. So after he wrote that story, OpenAI jumped all over it and prevented, that kind of abuse from occurring. But they have literally 10,000 people working for them who are constantly watching these prompts and these things we're putting in and flagging stuff. They have humans who are flagging this stuff that they think is really out of bounds. And then they program in ways to prevent it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
How do they do that for free?
Well, they're making a lot of, they're making over $1 billion a year now on people like me that are paying them $20 a month.
Okay.
And then there's also, besides that, there are developers. They have an interface for developers where I can write a program that pulls from ChatGPT's databases to run my program. So behind a number of new apps and programs is ChatGPT helping to run those programs. So much so that they created their own little interface where you can create a custom GPT for something you do repetitively. So I'll show you one that I created. Where did I put it? We write a lot of those Amazon descriptions that I showed you, that we pulled the one for the press release. We write those. And there's a pattern to it. It's sales copy. So I created what's called a GPT that's called an Amazon book page description copywriter. And I told it what the rules are. We're going to open with a hook. We're going to end with a call to action. In the middle, we're going to put a synopsis in. And if I start working with this, it'll interact with me because I've given it a set of rules. So if I say to it, I want to write a description of a new book. I'm purposely being non-specific here, unlike the other prompts you've seen. And it's going to say, great, let's get started. Is your book fiction or nonfiction? Fiction. Okay. What's the genre? Let's say psychological thriller. Now, I don't have to enter this in piecemeal, but I'm doing it just to demonstrate. So now what it wants to do is tell it the name of the book, the title, a little summary, the setting, blah, 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 blah. And then when I do that, it will pump out an Amazon book page description. I can even show you one just for the heck of it. Let's see. That I created with this. Here we go. Here it's here's the book. It's nonfiction. Here's the full description of the book. Please render it. Please
Saying goodbye. Saying goodbye. Sorry. Thank you much, President Stalkin, and I want to watch them.
So long. So yeah, and it'll do it. And that's a repetitive task that I have, and then it'll write the description. Yeah. Okay. So what's AI good for? And it's not good for everything. And I'll share with you what some of the limitations are that I found. It's good for creating emails, and if you use Gmail, there's now you'll get a prompt. You can use Gemini. You can have it create emails if you give it some information. It's good for resumes and sales copy and invitations, like I showed you, or how to do something. Even programming, and I didn't show you an example, but I had to create a legal document for me, and it did a fabulous job in one pass. What it's not good at in that venue is it's not necessarily good at heartfelt expressions, human emotion. Sometimes it flubs the facts, but you can ask it to check for accuracy or share a citation with you to prove a point. On the creative side, Adina, I think you were asking about self-publishing. It's wonderful for coming up with ideas, like I showed you the book of thank you notes, or the book on questions. It will even create a pretty good outline of that book, like it did. It's great at titles. If I write a short story and I put it in and I say, give me 10 compelling titles for the following thing that I wrote, it's really pretty good at brainstorming titles. But there is a limitation where if you say, okay, write the story for me, you'll find that it's sort of flat or two-dimensional.
Okay, there are different language models. Some are better than others in terms of, giving you the detail of the novel or whatever. I don't know what you suggest, but I found a post, Anthropic's post, the cloud models, it's called Opus and Sonnet. They're pretty good, pretty decent. You probably do some editing, and even 4.0 Omni are pretty good too. Yeah, these days.
Yeah. It's getting better, and maybe it'll get more creative. I think I haven't seen it yet being able to understand subtext. And
yes.
I did a little test on this that was kind of interesting. I was flying back from San Francisco to New Jersey. So on the plane, I wrote 1,000 words that were as half of a short story about a candy store on the corner next to a grammar school, like I had one and maybe you had one. And the characters in the candy store and the interaction between the owner and a little girl who came in every day. So I wrote the first 1,000 words. I entered it into ChatGPT and I tried 2 experiments. One was come up with 5 ideas for what happens next. And it came up with some, couple of pretty good ideas, right? But then I said, okay, write another 1,000 words and finish the story. And what it wrote was really very shallow. It didn't really pick up the emotion and the kind of the sweetness of the story. It doesn't really get subtext. Those subtleties and nuance. And
but you could ask it to make it a more emotional, make it a more terse, make it a more aggressive or something like that. Improve over time. Yeah.
You got the idea. That's what you would try to do. But maybe at some point you're better off just writing it.
Yeah. But some models are better than others, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and they will get better. And there's whole
Yeah.
books on Amazon now that have been written with AI and the use of, and you'll read articles about people who produced a book in 24 hours and blah blah blah. In general, those books don't sell.
No.
So,
Yeah.
I just, because I find all this very fascinating, and what I really feel is that all of this really democratizes writing. Like in the past, you might have had a writer and you might have lots of assistants, and then you'll get each one, give me 5 ideas, and then you go to each one and you'll say, okay, this is great, this is not so great, this needs work. And now you don't need to have like those 5 assistants working for you. You've got like this computer that's working for you and you're paying $20-30 a month. Same thing with, using Grammarly or anything, same thing. So I feel like a 1-person show has access to 5 people that help them with creative ideas, another 3 that are doing the spell check. But you still need to be the creator, because it could be nonsense that's getting spewed out. It may not make any sense. So I think it's a great tool to help democratize a lot of writing. But I think just like if you had a business and you have to make sure that there's accuracy and it makes sense, that there's emotion and there's flowing, you're still in control of that.
Right,
but it just
right.
allows the average person to have access to a ton of resources that in the past was only available to a few.
Right. That's well said, Siobhan. I view it that way too, as a tool. If you go back to that bicycle of the mind idea, it's a tool that can help you go faster and be very creative. And for straight things like blog posts, it's excellent. There's plugins now that will create blog posts for you that are pretty decent. But it requires a driver. It does require somebody to be thinking about it, at least for now. But just like the word processor sped up our ability to type and create documents, this will speed it up. And an interesting sort of study of this is, okay, how did schools respond to the advent of ChatGPT? The first response was to ban it, right? Because they didn't want people, students, cheating, right? That was what it was viewed at. The enlightened approach is, okay, they're going to be using this. Let's teach them how to get really good at it. Let's teach them prompt engineering and how to really get good at it. And so you will see courses now in college in prompt engineering. My prediction is in a year or two, there will be departments for AI engineering, which is creating these. There are job positions now. You can make up to $300,000 a year as a prompt engineer if you're really good at creating these prompts. So what you're using is, in addition to a computer, you're using AI like a tool to output things faster and in some cases better. Yeah.
And more DIY rather than hiring different experts to help you with different things. Yeah.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
And
So
speed up the research too.
yeah, absolutely. It's great for research. I had a really interesting research example. And I didn't even talk about research as being an option here, but probably if I have it here, I may not have it right here. But I asked it to come up with, well, here I go down here. I had an author ask me, I'm looking to have somebody write blurbs for my book. Do you have any suggestions? And what I did with ChatGPT is said something like, and I can just do it right in here. Let's do a new one. Um, give me 10. I'm giving a specific quantity. Example blurbs for business book on leadership. And that's pretty close to the question the author asked me. Now, normally to find those, you did have to do a lot of searching and looking, but in about 5 seconds, it came up with all these examples of leadership quotes. You know, I can say, well, it didn't really give me, I'm looking for blurbs. I could say, well, give me actual blurbs from real authors. Let's see if it'll do that. Certainly. And there you go with the books and the blurbs. And they gave me another 10. And that's how quick I was able to answer his question. So it was, great for speeding that process along. Yeah. So now AI is built into, it's going to be built into everything. So if you use any Adobe products, you can manipulate images just by using text prompts to say, hey, change the sky from blue to gray, add some clouds, put a donkey in the middle of the picture, and it'll just do it. DALL-E 3 does that. We talked about the video one, and even in since I'm writing all the time, somebody mentioned Grammarly, but I have built into Word, I have integrated into it a product called Pro Writing Aid, which is an AI product that will critique my writing and suggest rephrasing at the drop of a hat if I want to do that. I'm not even sure this inspiration button here will actually do some of those same kinds of things. Here's my Pro Writing Aid, and I can have it do an analysis. I can have it summarize, critique, look for overused words, check for readability. This should open a pane. There it is. I haven't written much here, but it'll, this paragraph is very hard to read. And I should be able to actually rephrase it. I can ask it to translate it into any other language. I can do all of this within Word because this AI is plugged in. And Grammarly integrates with everything. So I have Grammarly checking my emails and checking anything I do on the internet for grammar. Yeah.
Are you happy with Pro Writing Aid? I had it for a while, but I stopped using it. Are you happy with it?
I love it.
Okay.
It's fantastic. And I've recommended it to several of the authors I work with, and they use it even more efficiently than I do. But when I write my books, I check every chapter in Pro Writing Aid, and some of the suggestions it makes I really like. But for writing, in addition to that, what I do is there's a function in Word that people don't even know is there, but I have a separate app for it, but you can tell Word to read it aloud, and listening to your work is really extremely helpful because you catch things with your ear that you normally wouldn't catch with your eyes. So that read function is great.
I heard that they just released a new version which is probably a lot better than the one that I used before. So maybe I'll give another chance.
For which? Pro Writing Aid?
For
Yeah.
writing aid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just keeps getting better and better. And there's
Yeah.
more and more AI integration into it. I also use for writing, when my book is done, I go to this site. It's authors.ai. I think I got it right. And what this does, it'll take your whole book and analyze it. And there's a free version.
Oh, Marlo. Okay. Yeah, I heard about it.
I was so impressed with what the free version did. I paid to have it do a single report, which was like a 24-page report where it analyzed the plot, it summarized the characters, it did all kinds of cool stuff. So
I also heard AutoCrit.
I know of it. I'm not as familiar with.
Yeah.
I would.
Okay, I'll try Marlo.
If since you're a writer, you should check out my monavenuemuse.com because I post writing tools and tips on writing, but also there's a podcast there where every other week we drop an episode where we interview authors on writing. So, and my publishing company is monavenuepress.com, and my books and writing are all on charleslevin.com. So yeah, the Mon Avenue Muse is a Substack thing, but I'll just show you these couple of websites.
Great.
Yeah, this is my author website. So these are my books, and all about that. I even wrote a children's book too, but that was my last one. And there's all audio books. And the Mon Avenue Press. These are just some of the books that we've worked on, but there's a whole bunch, and we design covers, create the interiors, edit, proofread, do all of that kind of stuff.
So you offer book review, evaluation, and editing services?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah.
We have great editors. Just contact me. There's a contact us if you want to.
Sure.
Contact me. You can contact me there and be happy to talk to you about it.
Okay.
And the Muse, which we're having a lot of fun with. I think we've had 7 or 8 authors so far, but this is, she's a psychologist that we most recently interviewed. He's an award-winning author. The discussions have been really great, more in depth than you generally hear, because they really get to what's behind their writing. And Carrie, who's on this call, I interviewed her for as well. This is Surgeon, who's a very interesting guy, and there's a bunch more. The first one was our Pulitzer Prize winning author, Catherine Ellison. So you might want to check that out. And they're great for not only authors, but for avid readers. I always was interested in the story behind the story. And that's kind of what you get from those interviews. So
you're talking about the videos or the podcast kind of an interview.
Yeah, they're available both on video, but also as podcasts. So if you listen to, if you have an Echo speaker in your house, Alexa, if I say her name, she's going to answer. This is right here. Or you have an Apple iPhone and you say, just play the latest episode of the Mon Avenue Muse. It'll come right up and just play it as a podcast. If you want to watch the videos, you can watch them here. But we also have a channel on YouTube for these.
Okay. Great.
where you can check it out. Yeah, I think here's the YouTube channel. I'll check this out.
Well,
Yeah, there's a YouTube channel for those two, if you want to watch, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I'll stop it, but yeah, so we have all of these interviews online too. So great. If anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, well, first things, I guess my first question, well, life is all about knowing what questions to ask. That's why we all went to college, if we went to college. But my first question to ChatGPT is, what are the best elements of a prompt? And I'm not going to waste your time to tell me, because
it will tell you.
It will tell me, right?
It will tell you.
But the real question is, with the political scene unfolding and all of the nasty skullduggery, can you ask it to find what information is false, political? Like there's a lot of Russian, a lot of Chinese fiddling on social media. Can you ask it to evaluate commentary?
Well, I'd suggest you give it a try. I mean, one thing that you can do is, I mean, as an open-ended question, that's very broad. But if you're looking at an article, say in Newsweek or
Put that in.
on Facebook, yeah, I'd copy and paste it in, and then say, I read this article. I'm questioning its accuracy. Please evaluate it and let me know if it's true.
Yeah.
You know, is Joe Biden a Martian? No, that's not true.
It's that easy. Just copy it in.
Just copy it in, ask it to check for accuracy.
Yeah.
And it will do that. You can also put in a document and ask it to proofread it.
Yeah.
Sorry. So Bill, I'm wondering, is your question is like, how do you, if you don't know what you don't know, how do you know what's real and what's not real?
Exactly. In other words, the Russians post something about Kamala that is totally off the wall, and rather than the world freaking out about a bunch of lies, can it be revealed as a bunch of lies?
Well, I would copy and paste it in, because I think if you ask the broad question,
you won't get anything.
What's true and what's not. I mean, it's such a vast universe of stuff. You might ask the question this way. You could say, what are the most common political misconceptions? Give me the 10 most good, it likes numbers.
Okay, got it.
Give me the 10 most common
misconceptions about
disinformation facts that are beams on the internet at the moment, or something like that.
Yeah, got it.
And that I think it can deal with. What you're hearing is, the more specific you can be with your prompt, the better the answer is going to be from it. Yeah.
Which is what it's going to tell me when I ask it what the best elements of a prompt are.
No, it'll give you a good answer to that, because I've asked that question.
It's a good question.
And it's better posed this way. Give me the 10 most important elements of an effective prompt.
Good.
And if you pose it specifically with the output you want, and if you don't like the output or you want more detail, you can say, well, tell me a little bit about the tone. What are my options in terms of the tone of a prompt? What are my options in terms of the content I can provide to you in a prompt? And it'll give you it'll answer those questions. It's pretty good at doing that, giving you instruction. As kind of a hoot, because I like playing poker, I asked it, hey, ChatGPT, do you know how to play poker? Yeah. And then it gave me all the rules for poker. Then you can even put in the details of a hand. Like if you play poker online, you can get a hand history of how the hand is played. and you can put it into ChatGPT and say, evaluate that hand and how well did I play it? And apparently ChatGPT is really good at playing poker, and it can give you a feedback on how well you played that particular hand of poker.
Can it do it real time in the middle of a game?
Well, there are these things, these poker programs called solvers, and you can get those, and it will give you real time.
Real time.
Yeah.
Oh, my son, he's actually has a company, but he just graduated from college, but he is actually working on like a visual AI model that real time you can look at people's facial features and be able to take a guess on like how the poker hand is, or even for video streaming. So it's kind of amazing, all these different, just by looking at facial movements to be able to predict, is that a good hand or a bad hand?
Yeah, and the facial movement thing comes into play in another way. Are you aware that there are AI psychotherapists out there?
Oh,
Yeah, there are. There's an interesting site, and I'll share it because I actually played around with this some. It's called characters.ai. Characters.ai. And I'll share my screen. You can see it. Here we go. So it's defaulting because I created a character for my character, Sam Sunborn. Let's see, I'll continue with Google, but no, I'm not going to do that. But on this site, characters.ai, you can search. There's many therapists there that will have a discussion with you, ask you questions, and give you feedback. And it's actually good enough that it will do it. Yeah, I set up an account here. But yeah, it has all of these different characters, and what's going to happen related to what you were just suggesting is it will be able to read your expression. OpenAI has that capability now, and say, are you feeling sad? Tell me about that. But here are psychologists, just as an example, and you can click in and interact with them and start having a session. Now, this is a little spooky, right? But at the same time, it could be a great boom for the mental health field, because the ones that are constructed well, like this looks like somebody who might be a real psychologist. I don't know if it'll get me into it right now, but here it is. What brings you here today? And you have a conversation and interact with it. There's also famous characters on here, like you can interact with Hemingway if you want, or my character, I put in Sam Sunborn as my character, and I trained it. And it's amazing because I had it read most of one of my books, and it knows my character's whole history and answers just like my character. Yeah, so those are just some other examples. But all right, so I need to wrap it up because the library is going to close, and Matthew, who's sitting there monitoring it in the library, I don't want him to get locked in. Jerry, thanks for the thumbs up. I hope you enjoyed this session. Any feedback?
Yes.
yeah, very good.
I hope
Very
it was helpful and maybe prompted you to think a little differently about what's possible, and just play around. That's really my ultimate recommendation: is try it, play with it, ask it some questions. Go to chatgpt.com or Gemini, Google's Gemini, if you prefer it. I'm kind of wedded to ChatGPT now because it knows my whole history. It will actually learn something about you if you want to do it, so that it will answer in a way that's consistent with you and your history if you choose to do that, or it can be anonymous, either way. All right. Well, thank you so
Very
much.
impressed.
Thank you very much,
Charlie,
Charlie.
thank you very much.
Good luck, Adina and Siobhan. Nice to meet you, Bill.
Yeah,
and Leon.
Thank you.
Okay. See you around the block.
Out to see you soon.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Bye-bye now.
Bye.